Can everybody hear me okay? So thank you for joining us this morning as we provide another opportunity to update our community on the Columbia Mall shooting from January 25th. Before I get started on my remarks, I just want to introduce the county executive, Ken Allman, who has been a tremendous partner as we've handled this incident in this community. So, Mr. Allman.
Thank you. I just wanted to do three things really briefly. First, and most importantly, we want to again extend our thoughts and condolences to both the Johnson and Benlolo family. At the end of the day, this is about a tragedy for those families. It's a tragedy that has broader community impacts, and we saw that in the aftermath of the event at the mall. But at the end of the day, this is about those families who lost loved ones. And we, again, keep them in our thoughts, and there will be information about how the public can continue to support causes in their names. Secondly, I want to thank our community. Although this was a senseless, terrible tragedy, as we all know, I am incredibly proud of the response that we saw from so many citizens coming together, as we said in those days at the mall, shoppers grabbing kids and huddling together with folks that they never met, store employees, all doing the right thing, coming together as a community. We saw an outpouring of support in the corporate community, folks really coming together. And so out of tragedy, we saw a lot of good values, and I want to again extend thanks. And third, I want to extend my appreciation on behalf of the 300,000 plus citizens of Howard County for the good work, the thorough work of our men and women in our Howard County Police Department and all of the agencies that assisted us. What we saw and what you'll see today hopefully will bring some closure to this. There'll still be some questions that we as a society and as a community will continue to grapple with, but I could not be more proud of what I saw during those days from the men and women in the Howard County Police Department on the scene, the response and the hard work that day and the days since as this investigation has unfolded. So from our chief throughout all of the folks in our department, my deepest gratitudes. And let me turn it back over to our Chief of Police, Bill McMahon.
Thank you. So the calls for the Columbia Mall shooting began at 11:15 on January 25th. And from that moment, we have made it a priority to keep our community as informed as possible. And our goal has been and continues to be to provide as much accurate information as we can, as quickly as we can. And certainly I understand the level of interest that was in this story, in this incident on January 25th. But I must also admit to some frustration. Some of the early reporting, especially early on, was simply wrong. Primarily, the reporting that the two innocent victims in this case, Breonna and Tyler, knew or somehow involved with their killer was baseless. And as you will hear in more details during our presentation, our investigation has clearly shown that there is no connection between the shooter and the two young people whose lives he cut short. And the inaccurate reporting of a domestic relationship between them was a distraction for us, but more importantly, it was very, very painful to their families. So today is another step in providing you with accurate information. My goal is to share with you as much as I can about what we have learned in our investigation. And while the case has not been officially closed, we want to bring you up to date and hopefully bring some closure for the victims' families and for the community. And admittedly, we are taking a very unusual step of providing the information, the amount of information, the type of information that we're providing today on a case that is still active. And so this case has produced many questions from our community. How could something like this happen here in Howard County? How was the shooter able to bring a shotgun into the Columbia Mall and not be noticed? What prompted him to do the horrific things that he did that day? Did anyone else know of his plans? And could this have been prevented? Unfortunately, the shooter is the only one that can answer many of these questions. Because he killed himself, there will be no trial, there will be no public hearing, there will be no other venue for our public to find out what happened. So that's why we are taking this somewhat unusual step in a still active case to provide that information. Before I begin, let me offer a few thank yous. And to echo the sentiments of the county executive, let me thank the men and women of the Howard County Police Department who responded with speed and professionalism to this very challenging incident and continue to do so today. To the many allied agencies we had in law enforcement at the local, state, and federal level that responded that day to help us to secure that mall and to make sure all those patrons were safe. And that assistance has continued on with the investigation in the weeks since. To Chief Goddard, and I know Assistant Chief Butler's here on his behalf, and to Ryan Miller from Office of Emergency Management for their ongoing support with this incident. I want to thank Ashley Venable and her team at the Columbia Mall, who were tremendous partners in responding to this incident and continue to be very, very involved in our investigation. And certainly to the County Executive, Ken Allman, and to the members of the Council who years ago made a commitment to make sure that we had the resources that we would need on that day, January 25th. To our community, I'd like to thank them for their response, both during the shooting and since then. The outpouring of support that our community has shown for the Ben Lolos and the Johnsons, as well as this department, has been overwhelming. And I'd like to thank you in the media, because we've asked you to be patient from the day this happened, from the minute this happened, as we went through the process of trying to provide you as accurate information as quickly as we could. And I know that can be frustrating, so I thank you for your patience. But finally, and most importantly, let me acknowledge Mr. and Mrs. Johnson and Mr. and Mrs. Ben Lolo. I had the opportunity to meet with them during the investigation. And none of us can imagine the pain and suffering, the grief that they're going through right now. And sometimes an incident like this, there's a lot of talk about the impact it has on the community, and that's undeniable. But I don't think any of us can or should forget that the folks that suffered the most loss were Tyler and Brianna's family and friends. And so their courage and their strength has been inspiration to all of us as we have continued to work on the case. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through our response to the shooting and what our investigation has shown thus far. I'd remind you that it is still an open investigation, so there are many things I won't be able to talk about. But this is part of our ongoing effort to keep our public informed. The synopsis I'm about to provide you is based on a number of things. It's based on hundreds of interviews of people. It's based on a review of handwritten journals. It's a review of computers and cell phones. Some of that review is still continuing, frankly. A review of video surveillance footage from throughout the region. And so let me reiterate, there's no connection, there never has been, there is no connection between Brianna and Tyler and the shooter. And again, while this investigation is still open and there are many things that I can't talk about, I do think it's important to provide as complete a picture as we can about what transpired on January 25th and what we think led up to that. From the moment that the shooting occurred, this has been a priority for this department. As you know, because many of you were there, during our initial response, we had hundreds of officers from Howard County, but allied agencies as well, that responded swiftly to ensure the safety of those inside. We had SWAT teams from throughout the region assist us in getting people out of that mall, people that sheltered themselves in place. We had the assistance of bomb experts from several agencies to deal with those unexploded devices that were left behind. That day, we had 30 of our detectives assigned to that case, and they worked that. Those 30 people worked that for the first several days. Since then, we've maintained about a dozen detectives assigned to this to track down as much of this information as we could, and those efforts continue. So all of this has allowed us to develop a good idea of what happened. As I describe what we have found, I'm going to be displaying some pictures and still images to support those findings. And some of these come from videos. Some of the videos we know could be disturbing. This incident's only 6 weeks old, frankly. And so many of the community may find some of the videos that are associated with this a little troubling as the community continues to heal. So I have chosen to provide still shots of those. The full videos may be available when we conclude the investigation of the case. So our investigation looked back into our shooter's life. And we know that beginning in January of 2013, we begin to see a change in that life. We see a lot of internet searches. We find out that he's looking at some very disturbing and violent images. He's visiting sites that are devoted to mass shootings, including those at schools and at malls. And keep in mind, in January, he was still in high school. He was researching sites that dealt with anarchy. And he shows a particular fascination with the Columbine shooting, a theme I'll come back to later. And these searches that start in January of 13 continue right up, frankly, until the day before the shooting, January 25th, 2014. We know that in April, he went to a physician for a medical condition. And while he was being treated and diagnosed for that medical condition, he shared with the doctor that he was hearing voices. And the doctor's notes from that visit described those as being nonspecific, nonviolent, and really not directing him to do anything. And the physician made a referral to a psychiatrist. In fact, that physician followed up to see if that appointment was ever made or ever kept. And through our investigation, we can find no evidence that the shooter ever was seen by a mental health professional. That was in April. Again, he continues to be very, very active on the internet, and he continues to do research on violence. His fascination with Columbine continues. In fact, he downloads a video game that's based on the Columbine shooting, in which players, participants, can assume the role of one of the shooters. He begins doing research on guns and gun laws and gun stores, and he starts doing research on explosive devices as well. During this time, later in the year, he also researches and actually purchases a sling for a shotgun and a belt to hold the ammunition that he'll later buy. The interesting thing is our forensics people have gone through these records, and most of this is computer-based, and they continue to do that. One of the interesting things is that in the midst of all of these sites that are very disturbing, very violent, he's also visiting sites that deal with mental health issues. It becomes apparent to us that he knows he has something going on that needs to be dealt with. And so he is searching different sites, finding out about mental health issues, about mental illness. He visits sites that are suicide chat lines. And again, these are not how to commit suicide. These are people looking for support that are contemplating suicide. It's difficult for us to tell whether he took advantage of any of those services or not, but we do know he visited them. Beginning in the fall and the winter of 2013, we begin to see him move from this kind of searching and research phase into more of an action phase. And he begins to take actions that directly lead to the shooting that takes place on January 25th. Excuse me. On December 10th, he purchased a Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun from the United Gun Shop in Rockville. The images you are seeing are from a video that we believe he took in January in his home as he was videotaping the shotgun he purchased. Again, this was bought in December, so don't be confused by the timestamp. This was a legal purchase. He was alone when he bought it. And this first picture doesn't show the full length of the shotgun. The shotgun, if we had the full picture, it measures about 28 inches. Okay. This shotgun can be disassembled, and he did that. And this, again, is a picture from a video that we believe he took probably in the weeks leading up to the shooting. And if you notice the timestamps, he went from that fully assembled configuration to disassembled and there's a 2-minute difference in the timestamps. So it would not take long to assemble or disassemble this weapon. He returns to that same store, that United Gun Shop in Rockville, sometime within the next 2 weeks after December 10th. So sometime between December 10th and December 24th, he visits that store and buys some ammunition for that shotgun. At that time, he was with another individual, and we've been able to identify and locate that individual. It was a friend of his. The friend was not involved in the shooting, and our investigation has shown that he had no knowledge of the shooter's intentions. We know that on December 28th, he went to the Bass Pro Shop at Arundel Mills Mall, where he purchased additional ammunition for that shotgun. And again, at the time of this purchase, he's alone. So in these purchases, the only time somebody's with him is the one visit to the purchase ammunition the first time. Again, going back to the video that he made in the days probably prior to the shooting, he has videotaped this. And this is a picture of some of that ammunition. We also reported early on that inside that backpack, after we were able to get into the store, after we were able to secure it, after we were able to get into that store, he had left a backpack behind in the dressing room. And in that backpack were 2 homemade explosive devices, somewhat crude. Been explained to me that if they had gone off and somebody was holding them, perhaps lose a hand, lose some fingers, if they're held up close to the face, perhaps cause more serious damage. Certainly not powerful enough to cause major structural damage at the mall or any other building. We believe he made these from, he made these from fireworks that are readily available. That's where the flash powder came from. We can go back one, please. He also used other common household containers to contain that powder and the pellets he put in them. And he had a simple fusing system, essentially using the fuse that came with the fireworks. It's my understanding from talking to the experts that to detonate, they would have had to have been lit, or perhaps could have been ignited by static electricity. Again, described to me as something that would certainly cause damage if somebody was in close proximity to it, but would not cause major structural damage. We know that on January 24th, January 10th, he went to Home Depot. We know from our review of his internet activity that he had researched other explosive devices besides the one I had just shown you. And so he went to Home Depot in College Park on January 10th and purchased a common household cleaner, a common solvent that could be used in the production of another explosive device. Once again, he was alone at the time that he made this purchase. We have no indication that he ever made that explosive device, and clearly it wasn't at the mall at the time of the incident, the 25th. There's been a lot of reporting about the journal that the shooter kept. And so I can put this in context. This was not a 500-page typewritten document. This was about 20 pages of loose leaf, handwritten. There's a general progression in date chronology, but it's not a very well put together, well coordinated journal. But it does give us some insight into what was going on in his mind. And certainly the writings that we have seen support that he was dealing with mental health issues. And he has thoughts of suicide. He even acknowledges at some point in this journal that he needs to see a psychiatrist. And he also writes that he's going to kill people. This is one excerpt from that journal, and it's one of the more chilling writings that we found in there. You will see 2 things as you look at that other than the content. One is obviously we blacked out some of the language. The second thing, in between some of the words and some of the lines, you'll see some faint writing. What that is this was a 2-sided document. So what that light writing is bleed through from the writing he had done on the other side of the page. And it's very, very apparent from this excerpt that he certainly has the intention to kill people. At this point, we know his plan's set. He has planned and made his purchases, and he is ready to carry out that plan. And this is a picture of him taken with the shotgun, we believe, that was used on January 25th, sometime in December or January. So this brings us to January 25th. And we've put together a timeline here to help our public understand, because we got a lot of inquiries, a lot of questions about what was he doing all this time before he got to the mall. A tremendous amount of investigative effort went into establishing this timeline, and we were very, very confident in what we're producing here. We know that at 5:15 he leaves his home in College Park. We know that at 6:19 he's visiting a bank in Beltsville. And in this picture you can see him carrying that backpack. That is the backpack he carried on January 25th, and it is our belief that in that backpack is that shotgun, probably disassembled. And so I think that helps to answer the question of how somebody can walk through the Columbia Mall and not be noticed that they're carrying a shotgun. You'll also note that he is alone. At 7:30, we believe he boards a Washington area Metro bus. We know through our investigation that his primary means of travel was the bus system from the D.C. Metro area and cabs. And so we believe that about 7:30 he leaves the Beltsville area and travels to Burtonsville. And why Burtonsville? We get a lot of questions. Why did he stop in Burtonsville? Well, that is the end of the line for that bus route. So he could go no further than Burtonsville on the bus. So we see him at 9:39 at a McDonald's in Burtonsville. During this time, he has kind of pre-scheduled the arrival of a cab to pick him up. Again, take note, he's alone here. And I keep emphasizing that because there were some questions early on about, was anybody else with him? And clearly our investigation shows that there was not. In fact, nobody knew about his plans. In fact, people have been surprised when we've interviewed them that this young man would do what he did. She's picked up at about 9:50 by a taxi, by a cab. And then we see him again about 10:10 at the Columbia Mall. And this is the entrance up by the carousel, outside the carousel. One thing I want to bring to your attention is if you look at the timestamp, there's about a 7-minute difference between the video system and what we know is actual time. And we're very confident that the time we have on our timeline is accurate. So I just want to bring that up in case you see the difference in the time. So about 10:10, he gets dropped off at the Columbia Mall. He's seen entering the mall, again, up by the carousel, again, alone. About 10:18, he walks to the area of Zumiez. And then he takes an escalator to the lower level by the food court. That's about 10:18. We don't see him again on video till just after 11 o'clock. So he's down there for about 41 minutes. We're confident he is in that area. We can't see him on video the whole time, but we're confident that if he left that area, we would have seen him leaving that area. So we're confident that he's down there. There's a lot of questions about why he was waiting, why he didn't go up sooner. The store opened at 10. One of the things that we had noted during our investigation is some similarities to the Columbine shooting. And we know the Columbine shooting began about 11:14, which is about the time the shooting begins. At 11 o'clock, 11:01, he goes back upstairs, takes the escalator back upstairs, and he enters the store. He walks into the dressing room. He takes the shotgun, disassembled, out of the backpack, and he assembles the shotgun. That's about 11:01. At 11:14, he takes a picture of himself. And he uploads that picture to a website called Tumblr. And he also accompanies that picture with that text. Today is the day. On previous days I tried, but I woke up with anxiety. I woke up, felt no emotions, no empathy, no sympathy. I will have freedom or maybe not. I could care less. Again, this is posted just prior to the shooting. Now, in this picture, and I'll explain in a moment why we haven't shown it at this point. In this picture, he is dressed in cargo pants and boots. He has the shotgun in a sling around him. He has a bandolier that's holding the ammunition that he purchased and brought with him. Some of the way he's dressed, again, reminds people of one of the shooters in the Columbine incident. We're not showing that picture right now. We believe he took that in an effort to gain notoriety, that he intended for us to find it, and that we would display it in a public setting, again, to bring him fame and notoriety. We're not going to honor that intention. Again, that's uploaded at 11:14. 1 minute later, he steps out of the mall and he begins his rampage, or he steps out of the store and begins his rampage. He fires once at Brianna, who's standing behind the counter. She dies instantly. He then moves on to Tyler, shoots him multiple times near the front of the store. He also dies instantly. He then steps out of the store into the mall, and he fires 2 shots across the hall on the upper level. One of those hits a railing. The other one strikes one of the pellets. This was a shotgun pellets. One of them strikes a woman in the heel, and she's subsequently taken to Howard County General and was treated and is healing well. After that, he turns toward the food court, which is on the first level. And he's on the second level. So he turns towards the food court, and he fires 1 shot, and he strikes the wall that's right outside the Great American Cookie store that leads down a hallway that leads to the restrooms. And when he takes that shot and those rounds impact that wall, he very, very, very narrowly misses several more victims. He then turns back around towards Zumiez. He fires through the storefront glass at Zumiez at a mannequin. Don't know why. Did he think it was another person that he could kill? We're not sure. At that point, he re-enters Zumiez, sticks the shotgun in his mouth, and kills himself. A total of 9 shots are fired during this whole incident. He brought 54 rounds with him. Obviously, this is a tragedy in which lives were lost and a community was shaken. And we know that more lives could have been lost. Again, he brought 54 rounds. We are thankful for the quick actions and reactions of the patrons of the mall that day and of the raw retailers, the store, who quickly sheltered many, many, many people into their stores to keep them out of harm's way. We're thankful for the many people who did shelter in place and listened through social media and other new ways that we communicate now with our public in times like this. Listen to our guidance to stay put, that they were essentially safe, but we had some work to do that we had to get done before we could get them out. And ultimately, that's what we did. And certainly, we're also thankful for the ongoing relationship that we have with the mall in Columbia. Our response to this incident, and I'm very proud of it, didn't happen just on that day. It happened because we have been working, we've been recognized that as a potential issue for many, many years. And we have spent a lot of time working with the mall people, knowing that mall inside and out, having diagrams, having our officers in that mall, having our SWAT team in that mall, training for an incident like this. So in closing, before I take any of your questions, I would ask you not to forget the lives that were lost in this incident. Again, we talk about this affecting the community, about what a tragedy it is, and it is. It could have been a lot more victims. But don't forget these two young people and their families. You know, I had the opportunity to speak with both the Johnsons and Benlolos the other night, and they are, as you can imagine, are grieving. But they're also very, very proud of their children and the impact that they had in their short lives and the people around them. And they asked that I share a few of those memories and thoughts, so if you'd indulge me just for a second. Tyler served as the youngest member on the board of the Serenity Center in Columbia, Maryland. Many of you know that helps people with addiction issues. He also worked closely with Howard County Drug Free Program, speaking at many of our local high schools. He was making plans to obtain a degree in counseling. His parents describe him as a fierce and loyal friend, a terrific and beloved son and brother, nephew, cousin, and grandson. Brianna's family told me that Brianna was full of life and energy, compassion, and ambition. She was a mother, a daughter, and a sister, and she lived each day as if it were her last. Brianna was an amazing mother, they tell me, and a role model to her young son. She was a ray of light and source of joy to her parents. Both families have established foundations in the honor of their children. We will make sure that our community knows how to contribute to that if they choose to. I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who have already sent contributions to the police department for the Benlolos. And one of the difficult things, obviously, when you meet with the parents, there are many difficult things about meeting with the parents of children who have lost their lives like this, but it was a little less painful because I was able to present each of those families with contributions that people they don't even know have made to the memory of their children. So that's my presentation. I will take some questions. Yes? That's a great question. So the question was, why did he stop shooting? He had more ammunition. Again, the only one that can answer that is the shooter. We know from looking at the video that as the shooting began, it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday in the mall, it's pretty busy. We know as that shooting began, people ran. People fled. People sheltered. We may surmise that as he continued his shooting, there was nobody else in that immediate area. And frankly, we're fortunate he chose to take his own life rather than to run down the hallway and chase victims as they were fleeing.
Chief, was there any evidence that he shared his concerns about his own mental stability with family member, friend, someone? Was it known outside his computer to anyone?
We know, so the answer to that is we do not believe he shared that with anybody. In fact, there is an entry in the journal that when he recognizes that he has a mental health issue, that in fact he's reluctant to tell his mother. And I think that points to a greater discussion about this issue of mental health issues and a reluctance as a society to talk about that and the stigma that unfortunately is still associated with it. Because perhaps, if he had expressed that to somebody else, there could have been an intervention. Now again, he did tell that to the doctor. The doctor followed up to see those appointments were made, but to our knowledge, he never took advantage of any of this.
The family was not aware of what, as far as you know, of what had been shared. I guess, the bottom line question is everybody's asking is, what could have been done to put him on a different course?
So the doctor, the general practitioner, again, recognized this, referred him to a psychiatrist, did some follow-up work to see if the young man had actually gone to visit. At some point, the general practitioner, remember, the young man's 18, so there's some privacy considerations, right? So at some point, the general practitioner asks the young man for permission to talk to his mother, and that permission is granted. We have a little bit of a discrepancy here. The doctor is fairly adamant that he talked to mom, shared the concerns, that Mom acknowledged them and indicated that she would get help through her insurance system. We have no evidence that happened. Mom does not have any recollection of that conversation with the doctor.
Security issues, in terms of the mall, has anything changed, and has there been any thought of putting magnetometers or anything of that nature in at this point?
So the questions about general security measures at the mall is a tremendously safe place to be. It's tremendously safe. And we work on a daily basis with mall management to ensure that happens. They have a very professional security contingent. They supplement that at certain times during the day and week by hiring uniformed off-duty Howard County police officers. When we have incidents there that we think or they think may be causing issues, we involve each other very, very quickly. You know, the issue of magnetometers and things like that has been posed to me. The mall is a tremendously safe place to be. And, you know, is society ready to have magnetometers at the Columbia Mall? Are they ready for lines like we have at airports to go shopping? And, you know, I don't think we need to be at that point. I think, again, the Columbia Mall is a tremendously safe place to be.
Chief, why did he go to Burtonsville?
We believe he wanted to go to the Columbia Mall. We know that his modes of transportation primarily centered around the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, the metro system, the bus system, and cabs. And so for him to get to the mall, he could take the bus to the last stop on the line, which would have been Burtonsville, and then he transferred to a cab. That is our theory about why he went to Burtonsville that morning.
He could have also taken a cab right from his home.
I mean, I can't answer why he chose what he did. I don't know what the prices are. We know that his method of travel, his mode of travel, involved primarily buses and cabs. And in this particular incident, it looks like he took a combination of those to get from his home.
And one other thing, what do you think the overall message is for us as police officers? What do we take away from this?
I think the takeaway for the community is to develop a comfort level around talking about mental health issues and making sure that we have the resources to address those concerns. You know, in this case, this young man has done a tremendous amount of searches, internet searches on violent activities. Yet interspersed in this, juxtaposed among that, are these searches about mental health issues. So he knows he's sick. He knows he has problems that need to be addressed. He writes it in his journal. He writes in his journal that he's not comfortable talking to his mother about it, or paraphrasing it. So there's not a comfort level with him talking about this, and I think that is probably true of the larger part of the society. You know, we've done a number of tremendous things here in the county to increase our ability as a county, as a police department, to deal with folks with mental health issues. For years, we've had the Mobile Crisis Team, which is an experienced group of clinical professionals who work essentially from 8 in the morning to midnight every day and go on calls with our police officers. We have spent a tremendous amount of time offering our veteran officers enhanced training called critical incident training to help deal with those that are suffering from mental health issues. In last year's budget, the county executive, recognizing this issue, allowed the health department to hire a mental health professional that is embedded in the police department to help us review the many, many calls that we have that involve mental health issues, to try to develop a more comprehensive response to them so that we are not locking people up that really have mental health issues and that we're not having incidents like this. So I think we've made tremendous inroads in this county, but I think as a society in general, there's a lot left to do on the mental health front.
Chief, did his mother know that he had the shotgun? Was she aware of that?
We have no indication that Mom knew about the shotgun, about the ammunition, about any of this. In fact, we know that he secreted many of those things. He lived with Mom and his older sister. We know that he secreted many of those things from where a mother may find them in his house.
Chief, you mentioned the picture at the dressing room. Can you search that picture of himself while he was in the dressing
Yes, it was a mirror, so, basically it's a picture of him in a mirror.
And also, did he put anything else on in the photo of him in the mall?
Right, so in the photo in the mall, he has a kind of a jacket on or sweatshirt and then the backpack. When he comes out shooting, he's wearing these cargo pants, a white T-shirt, the bandolier with the ammunition, and the sling with the gun. So he left that clothing behind.
Changed from those khaki.
I'm not sure which pants he was wearing during the videos, to be honest, when he walked into. But I know the shirt, he may have changed. Yes. I'm sorry?
Those videotapes of ammunition, were those also on Tumblr?
No.
Or do you know why he made those?
No, I mean, I think we think those videos were taken probably in the week or so before. We think he was chronicling, what the results of his internet research and his purchases were. And he was filming the devices he was going to use to inflict the damage that he inflicted on January 25th. Um,
Background is mental health. Do you think the motive for ultimately choosing this path was to seek notoriety, as we've seen in other cases? So what does that say about our world?
I have no idea why he chose to do what he did. I mentioned the fact that he may have been trying to seek notoriety because of the fact he took a picture of himself right before he did this, a minute before he did this. Why he did that, I don't know. We're not going to help him have that notoriety.
Chief, would you label any of this as music? You have the doctor, you have the mom, you have the cab driver. In looking back, would you say that someone did something along the way?
Our investigators, and I've spent a considerable amount of time with them over the last couple of weeks, been very, very thorough. They have talked to lots of people. Nobody saw this coming. They went back and talked to high school teachers, principals, guidance counselors. He was a young man that did not garner much attention to himself. He wasn't a bad kid bringing attention to himself. He wasn't necessarily a kid that was going out and doing things that brought a lot of good attention. He was just kind of a loner. We were given some information about some friends that he had, and we went and talked to them, and when we said, we're here because you're a friend of, and they're like, well, we were friendly with them. I wouldn't necessarily characterize us as friends. So those people, back in the high school days, did not see this coming. Mom was shocked by this. Mom and Dad were shocked by this. There's no indication in any of our investigation that there was anybody that he reached out to other than that general practitioner that perhaps could have intervened. Yes, sir.
Tell me, I know you said that the other person that he was with when he bought the gun is in no way connected, but what else can you tell us about that person?
Yeah, I don't think I said there was anybody with him when he bought the gun. In fact, when he went to buy the gun at the gun shop in Rockville, he was alone. Okay, he went back to that same gun store sometime within the following 2 weeks and purchased some ammunition. And he was with somebody that day. That is somebody that we did identify, somebody that we interviewed, somebody we were very, very confident had no knowledge of what was going on. Had indicated to this friend, the shooter had indicated to this friend that he had bought a shotgun, but that he was going to use it for target practice. So,
You mentioned repeatedly the motivational link to Columbine. I'm wondering, why, is there any insight on why he's turning the mall as opposed to school?
no, I mean, his internet searches were not devoted solely to Columbine. He had researched many mass shootings, including some at schools and some at malls. Recognize that in January of 2014, when this happened, he was no longer in school, so maybe he didn't feel like he had access to school. Don't know. Yes, sir.
Did the friend, did your investigation turn up the friend in any way express concern about Mr. Aguilar having a gun, even if it was for target practice?
No, none at all.
Chief, on the second time he was back with the gunshot with Brennan, the gunshot guy said he complained about the kick of the gun, so he had been firing it. Apparently, he's never had fired a shot like this. Do you have any indication where he was practicing?
No, we know he did some internet research on how to shoot a gun and the kickback from a shotgun. We have not been able to identify any ranges that he went to. Doesn't mean he didn't, but we have not been able to identify any that he did. We don't know if he went to a field someplace and shot. We just don't know.
Chief, where did he hide his gun and his ammunition all for that month period that he was missing?
We're not certain on that. We're not certain on that.
Chief, you mentioned the video game that he downloaded.
Yes.
about Columbine. Is that secret Columbine massacre?
I don't know the name of it.
Do you know how often he played it?
No, and I'm not even certain. We know he played it. We know he downloaded it. You know, there's some limitations to. You know, we know that. You know, a lot of this is based on computer forensic review. We know the night before the shooting, he made some attempts to use a kind of I guess, a readily available software program to erase some of the things on some of his devices. And we have been in the process of rebuilding that, and some of it we get and some of it we haven't. And again, let me just put this in context. This investigation is still ongoing. You know, I'm answering a lot of questions that in a normal investigation that is still active, I wouldn't even entertain. We're providing information that we normally wouldn't give until the case is completely closed. This investigation is still continuing. We don't expect, from what we've seen thus far, to see anything that would really point us in a different direction. So this is what we know, and I think it's probably the best we'll know. One more, Jane.
Chief, just to explain the timeline here, he said in the spring of 2013, he was with a general practitioner physician and expressed concerns about his mental stability.
Yes, those hearing voices. Yes.
And there may have been a reference to do something else, et cetera, et cetera. But then about 8 months later or 6 months later, whenever, December 13, he's able to go to a gun shop and perfectly legally buy a shotgun at the age of 18.
Yes.
Do you want to comment on that?
Now, again, I'll just go back to this issue of mental health and, you know, people, individuals' comfort level, parents' comfort level of talking about it with their children. I make the analogy sometimes with, you know, with parents who are very proud of their kids who play sports, and if they tear up their ACL and they get treatment, and it's almost like a badge of honor in that family. You know, when kids are suffering from mental health issues, there seems to be a reluctance. There's a stigma attached to it. It's almost embarrassing, and somehow the parents have failed. And I think that's the more critical question for society in general. Folks, thank you very much for your patience throughout this event from the moment it came out in January up until now. We really have done our best to provide you as much information as quickly as we can. We know sometimes that can be frustrating, but thank you for putting up with us. Thank you for providing us the opportunity to share and answer many of these questions that our community has had. Thank you.